Hey y'all, it is March the 20th, 2020, and I'm late. There's good reasons for that. Not very good reasons, but I was doing a little research over at the stores. I went to the Target, I went to a burger place. And I want to tell you about it, but I'm going to tell you about it on the other side, and we're going to see if we can't get the vibes in the room real quick. And I know we're late, I'm very late, right? And I don't even think I'll be able to make it onto D Live tonight. We're just gonna have to keep it to YouTube, even though YouTube is straight trash, right? And the reason is because of the good people that we find here on YouTube that might trickle in, right? If we can get streaming to go well, all right, we're gonna have a short broadcast tonight. Who's to say how many people are streaming all over the dang world tonight because they're just not going out, right? Wherever it is, right, in the dang world. They're on Netflix and stuff and doing that sort of thing. Could bog down the system. Hope it doesn't bog down the system. In the meanwhile, I got a song. I want to play it, and I haven't heard it yet, but I think it would be very appropriate, and that's why I found it. And it's a world exclusive. It's actually breaking. We're gonna talk about it on the other side, but it's a cover done by Petite Meller. All right, I think you're gonna like it.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. Not before. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. Not before. Fine. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. Not before. It's the time I had some time I feel fine. It's the end of the world. I feel fine. I feel
All right, y'all. That was Petite Meller. Petite Meller. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And of course, y'all did not hear it properly or see it or anything. And I know that. I know that's right. You're on YouTube. But I enjoyed it thoroughly. That's why I just kept it playing. And I saw someone trying to peek their head up in the building. I see them out there. We're going to dive into this broadcast. I guess we're not exactly prepared this Friday. But that's because I spent some time at the store. Actually, I have stuff built up in my repertoire for at the store. And so, I mean, like in my own personal storage. And I still wanted to get some more, whatever I could get. I just got actually paid today again, and I already have money and stuff, but I was like, I'm getting paid and I got this money and stuff. I better not just sleep on it. I better go see what's at the store right now. Because who knows, there could be other surges and stuff. I've been out of the stores for a few days now. All right, so I go to Target, and Target is much more depleted than when I saw it the last time. All right. So when exactly is Target going to get more stuff, and then on top of that, HEB and every other store that is around, all right? And so just to give you an example, shout out to the person up in the building. I see you. I see you out there. I want to get comments from you eventually, but we'll see. We'll see. Safety first. But I just came from the Target, and nothing like it's way more depleted than it was, especially when it comes to paper products, as far as like, the toilet paper and everything that people were talking about. Everything, man, like it's clean, gone, dude. Nothing, no paper towels or anything like that. Luckily, I mean, I still had paper towels. I still have toilet paper and stuff. But when's the next time they're going to have that in? They're going to be rationing that out. those are the sort of things that we're going to be thinking about starting today, and before then we've been thinking about it, but we're going to think about it into the future, and it's going to become more of a serious problem. It's a serious problem. The movie Blood In Blood Out came to mind for no good reason. As far as rationing, it's going to be like prison style rationing, basically. Anyways, before I murmur and blabber on about whatever it is that we're about to talk about right now, I just want to say, for anybody who's going to come out and see this broadcast, hopefully there's audio to it. I checked earlier, and so I imagine my audio is coming through. But for anyone who's going to see this broadcast, if you don't take anything else away from this broadcast at all, it's that the stuff that I've seen, the Target and the stores before that, and the Calamity and this and that, and people just slathering their hands with sanitizer all the time. Okay, let's see. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. Like, I don't have the evidence and the due process that it would take to tell you that China is doing this to us maliciously. When I say China, I don't mean Chinese people. I mean, of course, the Chinese Communist Party. All right, and everybody's been knowing about this, and I'm not saying, hey, they did it. I'm saying, gosh, if the Chinese Communist Party could do anything, it would be this to America, all right, and everyone else. By the way, shout out to my people in Australia and stuff like that, UK. Everywhere you go, it's somehow, some way, some sort of shortages and people acting finicky, if you will. Meanwhile, nobody's behavior necessarily indicates that they're scared of the virus necessarily, and that's something that we noted on the previous broadcast. I mean, technically, when you think about the fact is that people are standing literally 6 feet away from each other now, all right, and shouting at each other in order to get things done. Other than that, nobody's acting like they're even scared of this virus, right? And of course, we did get news about Italy. I know you probably heard about Italy the other day. I just woke up earlier, not too long ago, this evening, so I don't exactly know what's happened in Italy thus far. But I have seen this all sort of calamity, and we are going to have screenshots, a little smattering of screenshots to get our wherewithal. But I mean, it's going all willy-nilly, all right? I'm not sure what we're about to get into. But like I said, and I'm sorry, I should have been more succinct, but this is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party would want to have happen to America and different other countries abroad, right? This is what they would want to have happen. Whether or not they did it on purpose, I don't really even want to mess around with those details necessarily. But this is definitely what they would want to have happen. So from here on out, that being said, specifically, I think we would want to think about, okay, what would the Chinese Communist Party have happen next? All right, and what would they like us to do? Because right now we're slowly, hesitantly bending over a barrel, and the reason is due to safety. All right, damn, I got 4 people up in the building. I can't even believe it, but everybody's on quarantine, so, or not really that, but social distancing, if you will. The Chinese Communist Party would love to have this happen. All right, I don't work for the NBA, and I'm not LeBron James. Right. So that's why I could say this, and I'm going to say it, and I'll say it a million times. This is exactly what they're benefiting from this at every angle. Meanwhile, we're kind of breaking ourselves off due to the safety issue. Okay, so some of the statistics I want to look at specifically, and I want to get y'all's feedback and input on this one. It's okay. You got Chinese Communist Party, all right? They're very strict about what it is they have coming in and out of their country as far as information, right? I think everybody knows it, and also they don't give a damn about killing their own people, and I think everybody knows that as well. They kind of have a history of doing that, like to include millions and millions of their own people starving to death, right? Amongst other things, who's to say they kill little babies to death? I mean, like, honestly, we can't even say these things on YouTube, but this is well documented and well known about the Communist Party of China. And I think everybody should have that sort of rhetoric. Donald Trump, for example, President Donald Trump, he has a diplomacy about him in which I would expect and I appreciate, to be honest. So when he talks about other countries, he doesn't exactly throw them under the bus necessarily as a diplomatic effort. And I can respect that and I appreciate that, actually. But at the same time, we know full well, Donald Trump knows full well in the back of his mind, you can't trust not a damn thing that comes from the Chinese Communist Party. And in no way is that racist because, okay, for example, and it runs across the gambit, all right? When you're considering ISIS, for example, or you're considering Chinese Communist Party, for example, or maybe you're considering the Mexican drug cartels, all right? Or things like that, things of that nature, right? They inflict terror. They try to inflict terror all over the world, and they succeed a lot of times. But most of the time, they're successful on their own people, all right? Period. And that's the way it always goes. I mean, you could check the pattern on that. They're always terrorizing their own people more than anybody else. All right, Muslims are the people who get terrorized by ISIS the most. Right? People in Mexico who have brown skin get terrorized by the Mexican cartels, right? They don't have no guns. Chinese Communist Party, the same thing, terrorizing all sort of Chinese people. In fact, it's not even non-racist, it's anti-racist, what I'm saying. Chinese Communist Party would exactly want to have this happen to America, all right? And so they're inflicting punishment. That being said, I want to go back to the statistics, and I do want to hear some feedback from y'all, but from what I'm understanding, remember, Chinese Communist Party are damn liars. I don't know why you would believe one stinking word out of their mouths, except in order to be diplomatic, and in that we have all sort of trade going on with China, and we've had trade going on with them for decades and decades of a very significant proportion, right? You might want to be diplomatic in that way, but I think those ties are actually unbinding right now. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but okay, so they would want to have this happen if they were trying to take over us and conquer us, right? They already got their own people conquered, and it's not a damn mumbling thing that they can do and say. And it's actually been all sort of protests about this, a kind of global uprising, especially over there in China or Hong Kong, Thailand, and things of that nature. All right, but let's think about these statistics. Chinese Communist Party is a damn liar. But what they said is, okay, they went under this lockdown, extreme lockdown. They're seen allegedly beating all sort of their citizens and locking them in boxes and dragging them down the street. And like I seen the videos, I don't know what it means, but that's what they were doing, allegedly. And so they locked it all down, and now allegedly they relieved the whole virus out of their communities in Wuhan. It's no longer there. They eradicated it, and they relieved all the problem. And everybody who got struck by this disease, well, they're dead now, and it's unfortunate. But you know what? That is what it is, and it's unfortunate. They're gonna move on. All right, they're ready to move on and start business as usual. All right, so it took like a month or so? How was maybe a little bit over a month that they were able to eradicate it? There's some damn liars, and I would never believe them. But think about this: they're claiming that they did that, and of course they didn't do that. They're not Chinese people have high IQs, and that I'll give them. The Chinese Communist Party is not exactly very smart, right? And they can't exactly cover up stuff necessarily. All right, and they sure as heck can't relieve a virus out of their extremely crowded populations anyways, not that quickly, not that successfully. And there's so many telltale signs, so many traitorous signs being strewn about in these days that it's just, I mean, you might as well just point everywhere. You might as well spin about in a circle and just start pointing your finger everywhere, because that's where they're at. Everywhere. These people... for example, I don't know if we have time to jump to it. If we go to Google, for example, and you go through some of the typical MSM publications, some of them will actually be talking about how China is like a model, and we should see like China. What if I type in China defeats coronavirus or something. I don't know what I would type in, but I wonder what pops up when I type in that. This is live, y'all. We're doing this by the seat of our pants. We're gonna find some breaking news. All right, defeats corona. Let's see what happens if I type in that. But anyways, you already seen the publications in which they're praising China and their efforts and stuff like that. I mean, Korea, say what you will about them, South Korea, but China, I tend not to believe it, and I think they're damn lying, right? Trump blames China for coronavirus and pandemic. Shoot, man, if we could play videos on this thing, live stream, I would of Donald Trump talking that stuff. And I don't know if you've seen that rhetoric, but everybody else has. In which Donald Trump is not mincing words, and I would expect him not to. China successfully defeats coronavirus. All right. So that was coming from GNN, a subscribe from GNN or whatever. I don't know what we're looking at, but it's a YouTube video. We're not gonna watch it, but let's see where's this publication from. What's GNN? Oh man, looks like some Middle Arabian stuff.
Low battery.
And of course, I have a low battery. Hold on 1 second. I got technical difficulties, but they're talking about. I don't believe it for a second, and I also don't believe for a second that they wouldn't just let all sort of their people die in agonizing deaths. All right. So that being said, we have a timeline on our hands. All right. If we take it all the way back to bending over a barrel, that's what we're doing currently. All right. And you can see the stores and the supply chains getting all messed about. Probably has a lot to do with China, and in that, a lot of the products come from China. I can't say how many, but a lot of them. And so that might have a little bit of something to do with it. But the timeline is that. It's just that. They took over a month to so-called defeat it from their country. Not at all do I believe it. Not only that, but for example, we'd be remiss to not say that 5G has been mentioned over and over and over and over again by many, many different people. And I do remember that I've seen some comments, so let me check out the comments. I encourage that, by the way, y'all. It's Shaky88 is up in the building, a legend. Ah, man, I just saw actually an upload that Shaky88 had put through, but I've been seeing a lot of uploads, so I can't remember exactly. It has something to do with the coronavirus, I'm sure, but it says, letting our children's toys from China. All sort of interesting things. Lead and this was an old story that Shaky88 is talking about. Lead in the toys coming from China. All right, and it's kind of underground, a little bit knowledge, but people know about it. Trust me. As far as the different various vaping oils that you could get from China, those I've never been a vapor necessarily, but I've seen people, and I know people. And for a while now, they've been wary of anything coming from China, right? And for good reason. All right, there's tales of people dying from God knows what up in the vapor oils from China, right? So that's another thing. And before this whole incident popped off, just so that y'all know, before it popped off, one thing people were talking about was those oils coming from China and having bad reactions from those. Now, Lord knows what they were putting in the liquids, the vapor liquids from China, right? Lord knows what they were putting in there all before it led up. I'm not saying it has anything to do with this coronavirus, which, by the way, man, I mean, just me saying those words is going to have the dang disclaimer at the bottom of this video, but I want to say it's like, okay, wait, I forget what was the point, but okay, this disease, they're not going to eradicate it, right? It's still in their populace. It might be manipulated, as people were talking about with this 5G technology. And so, all right, hold on. I'll address this one at a time. I'm going to get to the comments in a second, but what I want to explain is they took about a month to so-called eradicate it. Now, meanwhile, we're over here, and what we're doing is we're taking baby steps, just like I'm sure in a lot of different other places abroad. We're taking baby steps into locking ourselves down and breaking ourselves off and bending all the way over a barrel, right? And what I can conceive of happening is just because what's come to our attention recently is that certain entities will break themselves off to China and they will not even question China at all. And when I say China, I mean the Chinese Communist Party. They will not, and they've already made this well known. Like for example, the NBA. For example, Hollywood, right? And people know what I'm talking about when I say that, right? So for example, any media outlet or news outlet that will not say a mumbling word about it, right? And think of China as some sort of savior and that they're defeating the coronavirus somehow, and we should check out their model for how they do things. No, China should always check out the American model, and that's how it's always been, and that's how it's going to continue to be. And it's very unfortunate for China, but the thing is, they live in a communist country, and that's unfortunate, right? They cannot distribute innovations and ideas around the way that we can because we happen to used to have free speech, right? And so there's no way that they would ever be able to catch up. They're never going to do anything better than us. And that's obvious if you look at anything that's ever came from China, to include Chinese steel, to include any product from China. I mean, they have wholesale warehouses of all sort of Chinese goods here, and I've been into them. All these Chinese goods are going to break, and they're stupid, and they're made in a stupid way with no regulations. All right, so, okay, as we proceed into breaking ourselves off, everybody's kind of peer pressured to include everybody, to include the mayors, the governors, to include actual citizens, individuals, are kind of peer pressured into staying away from each other and being on, having safety first and doing what seems reasonable, all right? And so in baby steps, and they're not going to take any steps back. And I can promise this about the San Antonio mayor. He's going to go all the way with it. He's taking his baby steps. He's going to pretend to listen to people. Meanwhile, everybody's going to be losing their jobs. Only certain people lost their jobs in San Antonio, but it's a lot of people. And it's, to include people who work in restaurants, people who work in gyms, people who work in the tourism industry. A lot of people lost their jobs right now, and it's being told to them that they're about to get $1,000 or $1,200 in the mail for each individual, and like half as much for the children or something like that. All right, even still, obviously, that's not a lot of money. All right, our money's been inflated. $1,000 a month really ain't nothing to celebrate. So that's kind of interesting as to whether or not that goes down. How in the world would they keep that away and out of the hands of illegal immigrants anyways? I guess they all get $1,000 too. And meanwhile, I can't speak to it whether or not giving Americans this emergency money would be a bad thing or a good thing necessarily, just because technically, number one, it would be our money that we paid to the government. Number two, we may very well need it, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that, especially if we're locked down for safety purposes. We need some money. I personally have a job still. I still have a job. All right. There's a lot of people who don't in other industries. They call my industry technically a necessary industry, but we'll see how long it's necessary. All right. And you know what's the underlying issue for getting all that money? If we were to get thousands of dollars to every American, that would seem reasonable, but at the same time, what it would inevitably do is totally inflate our money, and our money would be worth less than it is now, right? So that's an inevitable situation that would arise. But however, I would be apt to come to that bridge when we reach it, and then we cross it at that point. But in the meantime, I'm not sure exactly what people are going to do, say for the next couple of weeks, or what we're going to see. I'm not sure in great detail, but what I can say and what I will venture to say is this. You live in a city like mine, kind of a metropolis, it's going to break themselves off more and more. As much as it's already done, it's going to continue to do it more and more every other day until you just can't take it no more. Until you had to speak out about it, until basically nobody in the city has jobs, right? And that's not like embellishing necessarily, because I just saw, we gotta run through the screenshots pretty soon, y'all, but I just saw an article right before the broadcast talking about everybody in New York City needs to shut the hell up and go home and can't work. And I know that that's not right. that can't be right because 100% of the people can't go home and stay home just because there's things that y'all need to be able to run, like utilities, for example. People still need electricity. So you're not going to tell me all these people can't come to work. People are still going to need water and things of that nature. All right, you got to make sure that that's still working. Is that all ran by robots? Is it that disgusting? It's ran all by robots. I'm not sure. We might get to the bottom of that, but okay. There's a certain point between here and totally breaking ourselves off and nobody going to work and everybody paying each other $1,000 like that means anything. Um, there's a point between now and then in which some people, I imagine, are going to say, hey, this is enough. What the hell? They're going to totally shut down our economy and stuff, tell us that's good for us. Here's the thing, if you know anything about the economy, you know that when it drops, so does the life rate, you know what I'm saying? People start dying, right? Old people and feeble people and stuff like that, people start succumbing when you dive headlong into poverty. And that's inevitable as far as poverty goes. Of course, you're going to have all sort of people dying and stuff and malnutrition. So you wouldn't want to go that route. That's what I want to. That's what I want to discuss specifically. You wouldn't want to go that route because more people are gonna die. So you're kind of left with a hard decision. But like I was insinuating earlier, if it took the people in charge of China, if it took them only a month to eradicate it, well, maybe we can go through precautions. Technically, we're already doing it. Regardless of my opinion, this is what we're already doing. Maybe we can go through the precautions and just live extra special safe for the next, let's say, 2 weeks, see how it goes. And then inevitably, I'm here to guarantee you, we're going to have to see about the next 2 weeks after that and see how that goes because it's not going to get any better. They are going to be instilling more and more regulations in the meantime. And just stuffing you harder and harder into your little dwelling in the meantime. All right. And at the second set of 2 weeks, I think we'll really get a grasp on what they're fixing to do. Meanwhile, I predict right now that's not going to look any better. A month from now, a month from today, what I'm predicting is from all the hysteria drummed up by the media and from the politicians and them setting these precedents, the situation will have not gotten better. What you will find is more cases of the coronavirus, and there will subsequently be more deaths from it. Now, will it be a lot? Will it be a whole lot? I don't think so. Will it kind of sound like a lot at that point? Will it be like 300, 400? By that point, yeah, maybe. Maybe it will be. Is that a lot of people around the country? No, it isn't. Especially when you consider their demographic. Lots of times they're old people, and we're not trying to generation gap people. We're not trying to discriminate on people for their age. But it just so happens that old people do die from things, and they're not so strong and healthy as other people. And that does happen. All right. So, but like I was saying, when they get to that number, they're going to be like, oh, look at this. We can't contain it. We've been containing it. See, this is what they're going to say. This is what the mayor is going to say. Like between now and a month from now. The mayor of San Antonio, just like the mayor of your town or some town near you, they're going to say, oh, man, we tried so hard and we were so cautious. And still we got more cases. And we got some more deaths. So y'all gonna have to break yourselves off more. What you're doing is not enough. You're gonna have to do more. And what does that entail? A whole bunch of stuff that the Chinese Communist Party would be delighted about. Okay? And so that is how it's gonna work out. So that being said, that's the direction they're going, and they're not confused about what direction they're going. As far as politicians, people in the media and this and that, they might be able to claim ignorance and stuff. They might be like, oh, well, I don't know, I'm just doing my job. Okay, maybe you are, but you are working towards an end, and that end is what I described, in which the Chinese Communist Party has us in a certain kind of way. And the thing is, at a certain timeline, when you're diving down into poverty, you're going to become rife for someone to invade you at that point, all right? For example, hypothetically, California get totally invaded by Chinese people. You might say, oh, that'll never happen. Yeah, that'll absolutely happen. In fact, that's typically what happens, all right? They're not just going to like cut us a break when there's disease all over the country, so called, and we're all sort of in poverty, nobody has jobs, and we're all starving, all right? They're not really going to cut us a break necessarily. So that might be their plan. I'm not saying that's their plan, but it could hypothetically be their plan. It wouldn't be so convenient, all right? Especially when we're thriving, we're making all these economic gains. We were beating them in the trade war, and not only that, we were about to have a pretty delightful season in which I bet you a lot of people are going to bring in some good crops, and we're going to think about distancing ourselves away from Chinese food and Chinese products in general. I think a lot of people were already thinking about that, especially to include about these protests that some people spoke out about and then got ridiculed from and admonished from by the NBA and things of that nature, right? So this has been developing and going on for quite some time. Definitely behind the scenes, but even in front of the scenes now, it's been the main topic, right? It's your Chinese stuff. So we're about to get into the screenshots real quick, and then give me some visual cues about some of the stuff that I may have forgot considering this here Chinese disease. Now, Shaky88, before we move on, says 0 new corona cases. Really? Yeah, and I mean, this is a question for the Communist Party of China. 0 new corona cases in towns that I wouldn't even believe. As far as a town or a city with 11 million people, I don't even want to imagine a city that big. All right, but how in the world could that happen? Said laid in their own baby formula, sold to their own people. Chinese people somehow, some way, I don't know what it is about that country, they wind up having babies somehow, a lot of them, continuously. And yeah, a lot of them actually wind up getting killed by the Communist Party, and they don't give a dang, all right? They don't have regulations, right? Nobody told Greta Thunberg that Chinese people don't give a dang about their people or our people, all right? They seek to conquer. And if you want to know what they'll do to us, well, just look at what they're doing to their own damn people, all right? So isn't that interesting, all right? But before we get onto the screenshots, all right, before, we drift off into some tangents, I want to say, okay, remember when I said a month from now, the mayor of San Antonio and all sort of mayors across country, they're going to say, well, our situation was bad, but it got worse. And so we're going to need to tighten our hold. It's kind of like a Chinese finger trap, all right? Pun intended. And then that the more you struggle, the more you're gonna be just trapped in there, and eventually you get so weak and tired and stuff, and then you wind up laying down and dying. All right. So the Chinese party, they would want to have us in that sort of poverty, and it's going to take some time. But meanwhile, we're in like the throes of death, economically speaking, right now. And how long will it take? So considering how long it took for them to so-called eradicate this disease that, by the way, some people don't even hardly believe in, think it's a total made-up fake hoax, right? Or embellished and taken advantage upon details, scientific details that nobody really knows. We don't exactly know what's going on, although a lot of people are here to tell you that it's a man-made virus, right? And in fact, the Chinese communist government has also had people who come out and said this is a biological weapon, right? And I think y'all seen that out there. We could go to the different articles and stuff, but we got all these screenshots to take a look at. Man, I don't even know where we're going to start. I guess we'll start from the most recent one. But before we do, my thing is I'm going to be looking at it knowing full well we're going to be taking these precautions, all right, whether we like it or not, to see if the disease builds up. Now, we need to take a hard look at the amount of people it kills and the amount of cases around the country at the end of this month. I don't think that's going to take place, but between us individuals, we'll be taking a hard look at those numbers. If they're not extremely big as far as deaths are concerned, Well, I think we're gonna have to pick our economy back up and go back to work and tell all these mayors to shut their damn mouths because, yeah, some people are dying and stuff. People die on Earth. But we can't all be shivering in fear and waiting for the check to come in the mail because that's not how it works. Right? We would have to then literally tell these because the longer we stay in submission, the tighter the grass is going to be, and the more that they're going to feel confident to not want to give us our liberties back. And that's the way it always goes. That's not a maybe. That's the way that they're going to do it unless we fight back at that point. And I don't mean violence. I'm just saying at that point, I imagine everybody would come out their house and be like, look, y'all gonna have to kill me with this damn disease because I need to go to work, all right? And I'm tired of this. That's pretty much how it's gonna go down. But like I said, uh, these people who are working basically on behalf of the Chinese, that's what they're seeking to do is to tighten their grasp, and they're only gonna tighten it through fear, all right? Meanwhile, if you have a high, for example, a high case number, and a low death number, what that would signal to me, in that specific scenario, would signal to me is that we've gotten this coronavirus. And just like my theory and a lot of people's theory out there is we've been had the coronavirus since at least November and probably before that. And that's why we've been seeing people sick. That's why I've seen some people sick for weeks and weeks, all right, with some sort of disease. I'm here to bet that they had some sort of corona or something similar to it. All right, so it's actually been here for a long time. And that's why you're going to find so many cases because some people are just getting along with it. And some people are inevitably going to die from it, all right, especially old people. But there will be some young people. Anyways, I wanted to get on DLive today, all right? And in fact, I want to get on DLive more and more. But I just hopped on YouTube because while I was in Target and I was seeing these sort of things, these developments, I got kind of carried away and I was just looking at stuff. And then after I left, I actually was walking back and I passed a burger place. And I went in, I was like, because I was thinking to myself, there's hardly anybody in the parking lots around here. I was like, when is the next time I'm even going to be able to stop and get a burger somewhere? Wouldn't that be what the Chinese Communist Party would love to have happen, right? Rocked our world, our foundations, if you will. That being said, it's kind of a shot across the bow. And I think that there's different things that we're going to talk about in the future about that as far as do we find that an insult, an act of a threatening manner, right? Do we find it to be that? And if so, what's going to be our response to that? Right. But meanwhile, let's race through some screenshots while we have some time. I appreciate y'all out there. Tours are canceled. Some musicians are turning to Twitch. That's actually all part of the music revolution. That I don't know if y'all heard me talking about out there, but we are actually going through a music revolution. And at the end of it, all music is going to be for free. No questions asked for everybody. And it's still going to work. All the musicians are still going to get money and they're still going to get paid and everything. It's just all music is going to be free. And right now, part of the revolution is that a lot of people are going on Twitch and live streaming. And they've been doing that, live streaming just their artists, right? And people want to see them. That's why they go see them in concert. And so they'll see them on the internet. And they've been doing that. It's very popular. It's actually a really great way for musicians to make money while not having to go on tour. Or even, you don't even have to do shows. You can sit in your room where you got your setup and just jam out. And people pay you money. And that's part of the music revolution right there. I thought it was kind of interesting that that's what they're doing. Because all the music tours and stuff are canceled. Everything, what the heck? Oh, I'm supposed to go this way. Everything involving music and entertainment and movies and stuff, all that is canceled. Everybody who gets money from anything having to do indirectly with those things, to include hospitality and stuff, all that's getting canceled. And ain't nobody getting paid unless you're getting paid from the government. And that's always a bad thing. It's always a bad thing, all right? Or not a very good thing. So when stocking grocery shelves turns dangerous, I don't even know what that means. I didn't have time to read that. But that's an interesting article that some people are discussing, right? Businesses banning banknotes, asking customers to use credit. There's certain things that people predicted a long, long time ago to include this sort of thing, the elimination of cash, right? And that's definitely part of it. There's so many little tentacles and results of what are happening right now that play right into the hand of the Chinese Communist Party and their cohorts, by the way. All right, and we're going to talk more and more about those people in the coming future, but it's not just to accuse the Chinese government, it's to accuse people working with them, internationally speaking, especially domestically here. All right, I feel like it's going to be a lot of justice needs to be upon their heads. All right, and meanwhile, it's a sentiment that's lost on most people who are discussing when is a good enough time to buy toilet paper, right? So businesses banning banknotes, the elimination of cash that plays right in their hands. Everything about this. Rig count is, well, the oil thing, oddly enough, doesn't have much to do with China, as it seems. There's some sort of Saudi Arabian / Russian oil war that resulted in this happening. All sort of, see, it's interesting how it affects the economy, and in that gas prices are going way down low right now, especially here. You wouldn't even believe it, like less than $2. Well, less than $2 sometimes. Okay, the gas price has gone down way low. Meanwhile, hardly anybody has places to go other than work now. And so the traffic has actually become a lot better in a lot of places. So they don't have nowhere to go, but they got like low gas prices, and at the same time, our industry is kind of affected as far as our oil industry and our fracking and stuff. That gets kind of affected negatively, and those people can't compete with the low prices, and they lose their jobs. So meanwhile, while certain people are losing their jobs, these oil people out here, some of them are losing their jobs, right? It's a whole lot of jobs being lost, basically. Saudi Arabia just won control of the oil market. That's breaking. I saw that. That's breaking news, right? That just came out today. It came out hours ago. That doesn't sound good. The toilet paper calculator lets you know how long your bathroom stash will last. You know, certain things like that. That's what's going on. We're all topsy-turvy, all right? People need calculators for their toilet paper. There should be no reason that I ever said that in my life, all right? No reason at all. Unless you work for a toilet paper company, no way in the world you should ever need a calculator for your toilet paper. But some people do have that. San Antonio hotel closing. I mean, just dude, all sort of things closing. You know what's interesting is I found this screenshot. All right, we're just gonna race through a few more screenshots, and then I want to end off on a little bit of a productive note, hopefully, and see what it is we can do in the future. Just brainstorm about it. But in the meanwhile, let's just do a few more screenshots to include this one from GameStop. And it says essential business. It says that it's an essential business. And you might laugh at that. It says employees are outraged. You might laugh at that. People don't know how to use grammar in the headlines even of these publications. And of course, this is what CNN. All right. So GameStop says it's essential business. Now that might sound like a joke, but at the same time, trust me, I've talked to people, believe it or not, and I know you do believe it, there are people out there, and I'm not just, obviously, like, hobbies and stuff like that, to each their own, everybody's got one, I'm not going to get into it or judge anybody about that, all right, but I know for a fact that, I don't know, half of the guys out here, are just, that's what they're really concerned about when they're up in quarantine and stuff like that, or they're locked down. All they'll really want to know is like if they'll have different various video games to play. It's very, very sad, but at the same time, it is a good argument to say that they're essential, to be honest with you. It is a pretty good argument, all right, because some people will totally lose it for different various reasons. And actually, okay, so while we're on this note, just so I don't forget, people are going to lose it for different various reasons, to include their video games. And they were doing this well before any sort of disease scare. Like, people get emotional about their video games, and it is disgusting. But, and I'm not saying the majority of video game players are like this. It's a small minority of people who are just disgusting in their ways. and they're playing their video games, maybe neglecting their children, maybe doing this and that. Who knows what they're doing? But that's a small minority. That is to say, it's essential for them because they will totally freak out if they don't have what it is to take to play their video games, right? And while I'm on that note, obviously, some people, they might not understand it yet, but they will. When it comes to our drugs, okay, when it comes to a lot of the supplements, I guess, out there, and when it comes to antibiotics, a lot of that's coming from China. It's been coming from China for a long time. In fact, it was decades ago when we decided for some reason to just get rid of all of our factories that make these sort of things and give it all to China. And China went ahead and took it over, and so put us in a bad place. That's to say, regardless of video games or not, I've been saying if you want to do something just drastically just detrimental to America, what you would do is cut off their psychotropic drugs to the youth, because, believe it or not, a lot of the youth is on psychotropic drugs of one variant or another, and that's supposed to be like a band-aid on their cancer, if you will. Mentally speaking, if you would cut off those drugs, those people totally lose it in all sort of ways that you can't even yet imagine, right? They're going to totally flip out. Right, so the drugs that they're on actually become essential. Those drugs are very essential. Will they be able to get them all into the near future? Probably not. All right, but it'll have people freaking out, and that's exactly what you would want to have happen to a country that you had an interest in taking over. Larry the Cable Guy blasts clueless celebs for singing Imagine as LA's homeless suffer amid coronavirus. The homeless in LA and in San Francisco and in Austin and in San Antonio, for that matter, are a sincere problem, especially if we're locking down everybody. All right, and not only that, there'll be perfect vectors for the disease. Actually, I was listening to Michael Savage maybe last night. All right, so we wind things down. We got about 15-20 minutes left, I think. I was listening to Michael Savage last night, and he was like, yeah, we should test people. We should test certain groups of people. He might call that profiling or whatever, but I was hearing him out, and he was saying we need to test certain groups of people to include homeless people. We need to start testing all of them, rounding them up and testing all of them. All right? And you might find that a good idea or a bad idea or this and that about the Constitution. Trust me, the Constitution is really at question right now, but the thing is about the homeless people. I think what you'll find is a lot of them are gonna have corona. That's what, or not even corona, COVID-19 or whatever. You can tell they want this propaganda to be talked about over and over when they give it a scientifically cool name like COVID-19. They want you to talk about it over and over and over when they call it COVID-19. Anyways, these homeless are going to have COVID-19. They've had it for a long time anyways. And that's what you'll find. And once you find all that, you'll know, okay, there's no way, unless we round all of them up and quarantine all the homeless people, there's no way that we're going to keep it out. And we already have it. And people would realize, okay, we already have it. Now we got to deal with it. We might as well go back to work. All right. Inevitably, I think if you have any sort of sense, you'll do that. But in the meantime, it's going to be maneuvered into situations of total ignorance, supposedly, or neglect, and they're not going to test the right people, and they are going to conjure up all sort of fear. And they do work on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, right? HEB working around the clock. Everything's been changed. Now they got different store hours. Now they're working around the clock. Their shelves is empty. Gas prices dropping in San Antonio, like I had mentioned. You got this guy named Cuomo. 100% of New York workforce must stay home. How is that even possible? 100%? How does that make any damn sense? The government wants to start sending millions of Americans a check. Here's how to use it wisely. All right? There's no way in the world that you could use this wisely. All right? Regardless, no matter how you use it, on what kind of life-saving measures, there's no way you can use free money that you gave to yourself. Meanwhile, it's just going to be less in value. It's like you're paying yourself money. I mean, literally what it is you're paying yourself money, and then when you get the money that you just paid to yourself, it's going to be worth less than when you gave it to yourself. That's exactly pretty much what's happening, right? All sort of calamity. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out. And there's different other various things that I'm sure are going on behind the scenes that I can't really recall right now necessarily. But I will say that Donald Trump is acting bad, and he's using rhetoric, and he's saying Chinese disease, and that's what I would say as well. All right, that's what I would want to have him have saying this. Everybody's like um, concerned, and everybody has different conspiracy theories. Some people have a trust for Donald Trump, and some people don't. And like I said before, unfortunately, the thing is, Donald Trump has earned my. I mean, I can't go against what he's saying. All right, when he says the virus comes from China, and everybody knows that it came from China, then it came from China, dude. And stop talking about, oh, this is racist. Don't you think it's so racist? No, it's not racist that the Chinese Communist Party will not even give a damn about all their own people dying. Because, to be honest with you, it's better off that their people are dying. It's just less work for them and less mouths to feed. And meanwhile, to infiltrate them into other countries and use them as biological weapons would only seem to benefit that party. All right, they do not give a dang. And at the same point, for that matter, and I don't know for sure, but for example, people are considering different various countries around the world, and they're looking at their numbers. We're having to note that when it comes to Italy, and for some reason when it comes to Iran, they have high numbers. In fact, supposedly Italy has higher numbers than China. Now you already know that's a damn lie, right? China definitely has higher numbers than Italy, but they're fudging their numbers. Okay, so it seems as though Italy has overtaken China, and for some reason it's hit them the hardest. I can't say as to why, but people have came out and talked about the idea of illegal Chinese employment in the country of Italy, right? And I don't know what's true or not necessarily in that effect, but what they explain is that they do have that kind of stuff going on. You know how in America you'd have cheap immigration coming from out of Mexico? Well, in Italy, they have some cheap immigration coming from out of China. And those people serve certain jobs that, immigrants tend to get into. For example, it's said that in Italy, Chinese women, for example, will come in and do nursing jobs, right? So a lot of outsourcing for nurses. Those nurses will look after old Italian people. And that's one explanation. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying that's the most reasonable thing of what probably happened in Italy. And that's why it's all sort of old people dying. But it's a lot of them. Well, if y'all had Chinese nurses and they all had corona in their system and meanwhile didn't feel sick or anything, didn't have any symptoms, just spread it to y'all. Because it was all throughout their system, and it was all throughout, it's pretty much commonplace in China, right? The way that we're noticing different cases pop up here in America, for example, we just had the first case of coronavirus detected just the other day in Kerrville, Texas, right? I mean, it's just to say that when the virus reaches certain places, such as Kerrville, Texas, then it's everywhere. It's everywhere on the world. There's no way that it's not everywhere, right? It's everywhere in China, and it's everywhere in America. And the only reason we don't know it is because we're not all taking tests right now. All right, so, but it affected, that's to say that Italy hypothetically was negatively affected by their immigration policies, all right? And a lot of people over here call them groypers, call them Zoomers, and this and that, and just people of all different ages have been saying, for example, we need to stop it, dude. As far as immigration, we need to cut it down sincerely. If just that, we need to cut it down, all right? Some people have been saying that, and some people argue against that, all right? And, I'm sure a lot of people have their reasons, but one good argument for immigration, cheap illegal immigration, or say work visas and things of that nature. One good argument is that they'll come in and they'll do the job and they'll do it for kind of a low price, and they'll come in and get money and take it back to their people, and it's good relations between countries. Perhaps it is. I think this event that we're happening that we have happening for right now, and maybe a year, maybe years to come. All right, it's gonna have us thinking differently about that. Oh yeah, it might be economically, yeah, it might make sense to have people coming in with these work visas and stuff. But now, I think it'll start really sincerely at least decreasing it by staggering amounts. I think that's going to be very popular just because it does make sense, right? And it does make sense. Like, okay, for example, we've tried to play patty cake with China for all these years, and they have the Chinese people coming through, and that's all good. They're not a problem. It's just that if they're bringing disease over here, that's a problem. And so, that being said, if we can't trust y'all as a country to tell us when you had disease popping out all over you, just tell us. That way we can take precautions. We can't trust you to do that. Then we can't trust you to send any people here, period. And I think that you might notice that in the near future, if anybody has any sense, just you can't have Chinese people over here, right? Because of the way that you treat your own people, and it's disgusting. You might want to lift them up out of poverty a little bit more than you've been doing, right? And we might want to hold you to account on that. So, but anyways, devastating effects that it's had on Italy and on Iran. And I don't know if it's the same as far as illegal immigration in Iran. But of course, that might be one of the factors that are worth looking into, right, and investigating. And I'm very big on that, all right, investigating. I want to get to the bottom of it. I want somebody to holler at me about, okay, what's the origins? Donald Trump says China. I tend to agree, okay? But let's get even more specific. Is it a laboratory that had this kind of, or who traffic in these sort of things, viruses, bacterias, I don't know, weapons, maybe, biological? Is there something like that in Wuhan? Could it possibly it came from there, maybe leaked out of there? Did it come from somewhere before that? Because are the Chinese people, or their scientists rather, are they smart enough to be able to do these sort of things? Is it a man-made virus? Because a lot of people said it was. Are there different variations to it? I think investigating will find that out. All right. How is it being distributed upon us? For example, another good point is that, okay, if this is getting distributed all over the world, all right, from China, and that's where it starts, all right, the way it's doing it typically is by airplane, probably, or by ships even, but by airplane probably, when you consider all the people, and they're all up in a close area, and they're going to get everybody sick because you're breathing in the same air. This is passed by the air, they say. All right, so you're in an airplane. What it would cause is a pandemic of sick people working for the airlines. Would it not? Right. That being said, wouldn't that be a weird factor, but definitely a factor to take in? Wouldn't they be talking about that a lot? The flight attendants, the pilots, and everything else, all falling out with corona. And like, are all the pilots and all the flight attendants getting tested right now? And are they all falling out to death with corona? Because shouldn't they be? All right. Shouldn't they be one of the main vectors of this disease? Right, that a lot of people are calling a fake and a hoax, right? And we're not seeing very big numbers here in America, for better, for worse. We just don't see them. It's kind of interesting, all right? I'm not sure exactly. We got out of control teenagers coughing on grocery store produce. Like, there's different random things that are like, I don't know if you'd call it funny. I don't know if you'd call it typical. I don't know if you'd call it mind-numbing. But there's these sort of behaviors going on, all sort of calamity. And people have been joking for a little while now about the toilet paper rushes and this and that. And a lot of people seem to not have any sort of damn sense. All right. And that's probably a good note to end this broadcast on. All right, so I want to take a look at the comments, all right, to make sure I don't, miss something. But when we think about these dum-dums, and they're out getting the toilet paper and this and that, carrying on, they're coughing on produce and laughing about it. They're putting videos on TikTok of themselves licking toilet seats on an airplane. All right. While they're doing these sort of things, it might make you get disillusioned, frantic, and panicked, and with fear, and that's unfortunate, right? Because I'm here to say that Satan is who fills us with fear, right? And we're going to talk about different other instances of that on the next broadcast. I know we kind of focused on Corona because I think that it's pretty well crucial and in that it's affecting everybody's daily lives without question, all right? Excuse me. All right. But while we're focusing and sometimes getting dismayed at people acting really dumb, I think it's going to be crucial to remember, to remind yourselves, remind myself, of the fact is there's equally as many people who are becoming a lot smarter and are actually seeing things a lot clearer than they used to be. And that this is kind of in black and white, right? It's kind of being made, obvious that we're being messed around here. And some people are going to get agitated about it. Like, in that most people tend to want to live their lives and not be concerned about much outside of their lives, right? For better, for worse, that's how Americans live, right? But when you start really agitating them in this sort of sense, then they start to lift their heads up. These are all sort of people who did not have their heads lifted up. You did not have to worry about them. You could tell them to watch the NBA games and shut the hell up and don't you say nothing about communist China. All right, you used to be able to do that, but now all those people are picking their head up because they don't have no basketball games to watch. All right, they might be on Netflix right now, but after a while they're gonna get tired of the Netflix and it'll be like, well, why is I can't go to the store and get eggs? Why can't I go get paper towels? Why? Because China told me not to? Oh, because China's our saviors and we need to do exactly what they tell us in order to make sure that we don't all die? Ah, okay, I see what it is. So there's people of different variations. And inevitably, they're going to start going the other direction, and that they're going to realize, okay, people have certain power that they're holding over us, to include these politicians out here making certain decisions. The people who's running these grocery stores and stuff, they got all this power, and now they're just monopolizing on their power. For example, the only businesses that are going to be allowed to run are big box stores. All right, all the mom and pop shops, all the little local businesses, hey, they're closing down right now. And some are going to hold on as long as they can. They're going to get shut down eventually, right, in this economy. So people are going to see all that, and they're going to actually smarten up. They're going to say, oh, man, this didn't affect me. I was ignoring all this, but now it is starting to affect me. Now I do have to start thinking about, I don't always can go to the grocery store and get whatever I want whenever I want. That's become a factor that's no longer the case. And so now I do have to start thinking about my food. Now I do have to really start thinking about shelter and stuff like that. All right, there's going to be people who really start thinking about and considering things that they never did, and it's going to be working against. It's going to be working to be more independent, and it's going to be working against everything that the Chinese Communist Party would have us do. All right, and in fact, some people are going to be living their every waking moment thinking of doing exactly what's the opposite of the Chinese Communist Party and what they would have them do. Right? And so that is going to be happening. And at the same time, there's going to be people who's going to get extra dumb. All right? And just they won't know how to survive. And so they're going to start to get frantic, right? And it's those people who just can't fight back, who are going to get frantic and like a desperate person drowning, they're going to reach for us in order to pull us down with them and drown with them. That's exactly what they're going to do. And a month from now, when they hear about the case number, they're going to be like, oh, we need to go down to lockdown. We need to do lockdown for 6 months. Meanwhile, that's totally impossible. There's no way we would ever economically make it out of that hole. All right, so we're going to have lemmings. We're going to have these desperate people drowning, trying to bring us down with them. We need to fight against that. That's going to be a factor. We're going to need to outsmart them. We need to put them in their place and tell them to shut their damn mouth, because they can lay over and die, but if that's what they want to do, but that's not what we're trying to do. All right, and on top of that, another factor as we get out of here is total calamity. Now, there was a screenshot that I wanted to see on that final note, and I did make a screenshot of it, but I'm not sure if I have it right here. Anyways, the article is talking about how coronavirus. I don't think we had time to find it, but you might have seen it out there. How it's helping a lot of people in their sexual relations or weird stuff like that. Right? Let's just give you insight as far as the total weaponization of this propaganda and stuff like that. They're saying that some people's sexual relationships are getting better during this coronavirus thing. Anyways, they're trying to take every measure to prove to us that this coronavirus thing is somehow exciting, somehow it's a different thing, somehow it's like, oh, now we can reconnect with each other. The exact opposite is going to happen in most of these households, right? While being pent up with each other and stuff, it's actually going to make friction a lot worse between these couples. These couples who could have like maybe gotten through some stuff, they're going to get all dramatic. Some couples that are already violent are going to get more violent. You're going to see a lot more domestic violence, that's for sure, while all this is going on, and all that sort of calamity. You're going to see all that sort of stuff just build up into nightmare proportions, all while this is happening, all right? And so people are going to become very divided. Very, very divided. But as a ray of sunshine of hope, all right, I wanna finally get out of here, man. We're over the time limit, but I want to say this: while we're getting this calamity, and it seems so very hopeless, imagine this happens, all right? Imagine that a lot of people go out of their way and they have what they need and they start thinking about things better as far as economically, really start thinking about securing themselves and having insurance policies, if you will. All right. And we've saved to put a month in the hole and all these people out of jobs, they don't do stuff for a month. We come back with some modest numbers and cases a month from now and say, look, some people are going to die. All right, it's going to be a small number. We have all these cases and stuff. We're working on it, but look, hopefully in a month from now they say, hey, we've been had this disease. We had it for a lot longer than we thought. It's somehow not killing us. We're going to get to the bottom of who's doing this. At the same time, let's all go back to work, all right? And let's have gatherings in which Donald Trump can have his rallies again, and people can have their rallies as usual, and kind of find out all these protocols that we were doing, whether it worked or not. Either way, we're in the clear. China, they let us know that we can start living our lives again, so why don't we go ahead and do it? All right, so that would mean that a month from now, stuff's already starting to look up. Our economy is going to take a serious hit. There are going to be things that you really, really want that you're not going to be able to get. They're just not going to be there. The supply chain is really messed up, and that might be for a couple of years to come, right? Just to be modest. But at the same time, we could still, press on and build our economy back up and eventually replace all the different various things that we get from China. In fact, cut China off completely. All right, we're tired of all that. Take our Chinese people who we like and we have in America and stuff, and say, hey, you're American now, and you need to forget about all that Chinese stuff. Whatever they do, they're going to do, and they're going to do it by themselves. And we're going to make all our own stuff ourselves, and we're going to be energy efficient, and, you know what I'm saying, be at the top of our game at every level, and it is America first, and we're going to press on. And obviously elect someone who's not a senile, perverted old man, all right? And so we would carry on, although we would take a hit, we would carry on and our mentalities would be changed and certain people would be brought together, certain successful people, and our economy would then start to bolster like nobody's business or nobody would ever believe, right? That's the capabilities that we have. Or a month from now, we could decide to legislate ourselves into oblivion, all right? And have this biological weapon on us just take its toll, and meanwhile never admit that it is a biological weapon meant to defeat us, right? And from there get weaker and weaker until China takes us over, and that would be inevitable, all right? I think that's what we're looking at from here and there. All right, so I appreciate everybody out there. I'm gonna try and get on DLive. I know today it wasn't even much to speak of, man, like some big old rambling. But I hope I got some points across in that. It's a desperate situation. The Chinese Communist Party benefits completely And there's hope at the end of the tunnel if we can keep a rational head on our shoulders, right? And never forget that that we can only go so long while wrecking our own economy before people start to die because of our wrecked economy. Right. Anyways, I appreciate y'all out there. It's March the 20th, 2020, and hopefully we'll be on DLive. I'll pop up on YouTube just to let you know I'm on DLive next time. All right, and I appreciate y'all. Probably on Monday, if we still can, and I'll holler at y'all a little bit later.